seated. Now, my honor to turn it over to our president, Mark Sorkin.
The music starts, and then what? Immediately, almost by instinct, people grab hands. The chain grows longer as more friends and family join in. Those who know the steps do the steps, but the beauty of the hora is that you don't need to know anything about it in order to take part. All you have to do is say yes. Now the chain is a blob, because people are having a hard time squeezing between two tables. Then it stretches and breaks, and soon there are several chains snaking around the room. One heads out into the hallway and returns a minute later through another set of doors. As the music swells, a beautiful chaos is unfolding, and the joy in the room is palpable. Some order is restored as the DJ instructs the group to form a circle. But the chaos of Hava Nagila can't be contained. The circle expands and contracts like an accordion. And before you know it, there's a chair in the middle. The bar mitzvah boy climbs in, grits his teeth, and takes flight. Let's pause here for a second and leave the boy suspended in midair. His eyes are shut, but suppose he opened them and dared to look down. What would he see? He would see his parents, of course, beaming back at him with the same loving pride they showed earlier that morning when he read Torah for the first time. He might see his brother, his sister, his cousins and grandparents and extended relatives, some of whom traveled from hours away to celebrate the occasion, plus a whole gaggle of friends fidgeting happily in their fancy clothes. Imagine his delight when he realizes that he is encircled by everyone he knows and loves, and that they have all come to honor him. As he stands, or in this case sits, at the threshold of Jewish adulthood, the entire community has gathered to enact a solemn promise. They will lift him up, and they will not let him fall. This is how Road Fate Tzedek works. I don't mean the beautiful chaos, although we have that too. I don't mean that we help families celebrate their simchas. That's the easy part. Here I want to think about another, more complex role. Road Fate Tzedek cultivates a spirit of acceptance that inspires us to explore our Jewish identities. When we read Torah for the first time, or for the first time in decades, or accept an invitation to speak from the Bima, or introduce ourselves to a new face at a potluck, or join a committee, or attend any of the wide range of services and programs that are offered throughout the year. Like dancers in a hora, we don't need to know the steps in order to take part. All we have to do is show up, and Road Fate makes space for us, takes our hand. In the warmth of this generous embrace, we rediscover and reshape the meaning of Judaism in our lives. We can do this with confidence and with no fear of falling because we are surrounded by people who lift us up. The shofar blows, and then what? Once again, the community assembles, almost by instinct. Take a moment to consider the fact that Road Fate Tzedek has been hosting high holiday services since 1874. That's a lot of tequillas. When we gathered in March for our 150th anniversary gala, we were there to celebrate, sure, but we were also honoring our community's remarkable resilience. The physical location of the synagogue has changed several times over the years, and we have been buffeted by history and demographic change. But the congregation has remained intact, steadfast in our commitment to providing a vibrant home for Jewish living, learning, and expression. As a community, we are bound together by a shared belief that the path Judaism provides is rich with meaning. So when the shofar blew last week on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, we were not merely called into the sanctuary for the rabbi's sermon. We were reminded that we are the living extensions of an ancient tradition, links in a chain that stretches all the way back. Now, I'm no scholar of the Israelites, just a guy with a curious mind and access to the internet. When I was preparing for these remarks, I was interested to learn that the Torah specifies when and how to blow the shofar on the high holidays, and that the Talmud delineates the order of the blasts and the number of repetitions. As with many Jewish rituals, things get far more interesting, to me at least, in areas where there is room for interpretation. Is the shofar a wake-up call for slumbering souls? A symbol of the ram that is offered for slaughter, just as Abraham is preparing to sacrifice Isaac? Is it a wail of repentance, a herald of hope? What I love about these possibilities is that they can all be true at the same time. I love that there is more than one way to hear the shofar, just as there is more than one way to keep kosher and observe Shabbat and think about Israel. And I love that Rotfei Tzedek makes room for all of them, welcoming a diversity of perspectives and different styles of observance. The balance between tradition and inclusion is a delicate one, but if you care about fostering a sense of Jewish belonging, if you care about our future as a community, it is essential. This past July, Rabbi Minkus posted the second season of his new podcast, part of our Merkaz initiative, which aims to help us think through contemporary Jewish challenges. If you haven't listened to it, I strongly recommend it. The series, brilliantly titled "You're Doing It Wrong," diagnosed a common but overlooked ailment among Jews in many communities, including our own: the pervasive fear that we will get caught misunderstanding some aspect of Jewish wisdom or practice, and the overabundance of voices telling us when we do. This feeling, he explained in the introduction, now I'm quoting, seems to just hang in the air, diminishing enthusiasm and participation. Over the course of 5 episodes, in dialogue with Jewish leaders and Rotfei members, family and professional colleagues, Rabbi Minkus illuminated the dynamics of Jewish gatekeeping and explored its damaging effects. I think he made a convincing case that Jewish communities thrive when they recognize that Judaism is always changing. It's up to us, moment to moment, to make meaning of our tradition, he said in the final episode. The idea is to make a space where everyone is considered and everyone has a chance to grow. A crisis hits, and then what? Some rabbinic scholars interpret the 9 staccato blasts of the teruah as a yavava, the mournful cry of a mother who has just lost her son to war. This contradictory sound encapsulates both sorrow and the hopes that accompany the new year, in much the same way that Jewish newlyweds honor their union by breaking glass. I think Judaism has a lot to say about the dualities here, and I think we have our own spin on it at Rotfei Tzedek. A family that has just lost a loved one may feel shattered and broken. It is precisely at this moment when our Chesed committee kicks into gear, delivering just the right tonic to help them start to feel whole again. Soon the family receives the comfort of a warm meal and another after that, and a minyan ready to recite, ready to recite the mourner's Kaddish, and a room full of people who have dropped everything to share. Thinking of Jonathan Lear here. And a room full of people who have dropped everything to share the grief and exchange fond memories at Shiva. When it comes to the communal work of healing and restoration, we do not allow our different approaches to tradition and ritual to become barriers or litmus tests. Our differences make us stronger. We lift each other up in times of joy and pain. Rodfe enables us to cope with social and political crisis too. The attacks of October 7th and the onslaught of Gaza have opened up a chasm of suffering, the reverberations from which will be felt for generations. Closer to home, democratic norms are being undermined with alarming speed, and the tinderbox of political violence has been lit. We are living through an extraordinary moment defined by rupture and uncertainty. And yet within these walls, I see a different story. I see friends kibitzing over Kiddush lunch or lingering in the atrium for a protracted Jewish goodbye. I see parents passing traditions on to their children at family services and holiday programs, Lador Vador. I see volunteers stocking the love fridge and organizing to support migrants in Chicago as a way of honoring the Jewish commandment to welcome the stranger. I see joy and a search for meaning and continuity and compassionate engagement with a broken world. I see a quiet, distinctly Jewish form of resilience that does not even need to speak its name to be heard. Rodfe Tzedek is doing it right. Thank you.
In just a moment, I'll invite up our speakers for Yizkor, but I want to linger for a moment on our last speaker. I want to share some gratitude with Mark. And just before I do that, I want to share gratitude to Mark's team, the executive committee that does so much, that gives but never needs or asks for anything in return. I don't think that happens anywhere else. They show up, and they show up often, and this particular group has been showing up, leading meetings, committees, and answering the bell since before COVID. So we all need to thank Meg Schwartz, Russell Schmolitz, Robin Coiner, Jim Stern, and Ben Humans. When you see them, say thank you. Now, Mark, it needs to be said, and we need to all be reminded, has 2 children, neither of whom are old enough to drive. Synagogue presidents are often retired and of grandparent age for a reason. But that hasn't stopped Mark from accepting the presidency, being on that same executive committee since 2019, and always being in the room where it happens. He helped us navigate through the uncertain and scary days of the spring of 2020, when the Rodfe Tzedek staff consisted of 3 people, Rachel, Alejandro, and me, and not even a temporary operations manager yet. He was on the committee that hired Hannah and accepted the role of president at a time of growth. And growth is not always straightforward or easy to lead from. He navigated us away from relying on the money from the Chai campaign while being president of an organization that is sustained but is full of personalities. The rabbis deal with a lot of personalities, but so does the president. I never get an email where the president isn't CC'd, and I'm sure that Mark gets a lot of emails that I am not on. And dealing with this personality right here is no walk in the park, even if we do enjoy taking walks in the park together. You will never know how much Mark cares, how much concern he has for this place. not only for its continuity, that we meet the bottom line, but for you to find your place in it. For you to find the road faith tzedek you need it to be. I don't think you could possibly ever know, and that may be a good thing, it might not be. But all we can do in return is to say thank you to Mark, to be grateful for every moment that you've given, and for the growth that we've experienced because of your leadership. So we need to say thank you to Mark, but also to Janet, to Adele, and to Ari. Thank you. So now we turn to Yizkor. I don't think we need any other introduction but to invite up speakers. Our first speaker is Anna Siegler.
Today I'm going to give a talk that I've titled, Remembering Mother, the Quiet Rebel. My mother never thought of herself as a rebel. She was conventional to the outside world, an obedient daughter, a diligent student, a good big sister. But important turning points in her life reveal a fierce independence. Let me tell you about my mother, Nora Zeta Stauffer, our beloved quiet rebel. Her first rebellion was to neglect her stitching and quilting in favor of books. In 1919, the worldwide flu epidemic took the life of my mother's 29-year-old mother, Edna, and a newborn baby, the fourth child in the family. Mother was only 6, along with 4-year-old Henry and 2-year-old Ruth. Very soon after losing his wife, my grandfather Elmer married again. Clearly, he needed someone to help him raise his 3 children. Mother's stepmother Ella shouldered her responsibilities dutifully, but she arrived with fixed opinions about how little girls should spend their time. Mother told us that Ella criticized her for reading too much. In fact, my sister Mary recalled that in Ella's eyes, reading was immoral for young girls who should devote themselves to needlework and quilting. But Nora disobeyed her stepmother and became an avid reader. Then Nora chose a career path against her parents' wishes. Her dream was to become a nurse. Having been promoted twice as a student, Nora graduated high school at 16. She wanted to attend nursing school, but her parents disapproved of these studies for someone so young. Her path from high school graduation to her nursing degree took 10 years. First, she attended 2 years of college, which qualified her as a teacher, and still just 18, Nora returned to her hometown of Mulberry Grove, Illinois, where she taught students at her own high school. Many of her students had been her classmates. Some were older than she was. In those days, the children of farmers who took time off to help with the harvesting might graduate high school at age 19 or 20. All of her students were taller than Mother, who never topped 4 foot 11 inches in height. After 2 years of teaching and 2 more years to earn a Bachelor of Science degree, Mother, now 22, and in charge of her own life, entered the Presbyterian Hospital School of Nursing in Chicago. She loved nursing school and made lifelong friends among her colleagues. She was proud of her uniform and was honored to wear the cap that identified her as a Presbyterian Hospital graduate. She earned her RN on November 3rd, 1939, at the age of 26, 10 years after graduating from high school. But her dream of nursing was delayed for yet another 30 years. Love and marriage intervened. Mother fell in love with a man who shocked her parents to their very core. How could their daughter bring home this person for their approval? Her suitor, my father, Gail Hollinger, was a dashing, clever, and eccentric man. But all her parents could see were the glaring flaws in this picture. He was divorced, He had a teenage daughter from his first marriage. He was almost 20 years older than Nora. Born in 1894, he was only 6 years younger than Nora's father. Worst of all, he drank, he smoked, he danced on Sundays. Years later, when a family member asked Nora why she married Gail, she replied simply, "He made me laugh." Despite her parents' opinions and against the rules of her nursing school, my mother married my father in secret. Here's the story. Nursing students in the 1930s were not allowed to be married or to marry before graduation. If you wanted to marry, you would have to quit nursing school. That was the rule. For most of my life, I thought my mother's wedding date was November 4th, 1939, the day after she got her nursing degree. But I was over 70 years old when my half-sister Catherine, my father's daughter from his first marriage, told me with great certainty that her father and my mother had been married in April of that year. I was quite surprised, but rather proud of Mother's defiance of this particular school rule. Imagine, Nora and Gail had married and kept this a secret for 6 months until she could graduate and publicly celebrate their wedding the day after graduation. This was such a closely guarded secret that she never told any of my 3 siblings or me about it. It was to take another 30 years before Nora actually realized her dream and practiced nursing. Those were the 30 years she spent as my father's essential partner in running the family business and raising us 4 children. She was, in effect, the COO and the CFO of my father's small manufacturing company in Glen Ellen, 25 miles west of Chicago. In addition to her responsibilities at the factory, Mother was very present at home. She ran a calm and efficient household. She cooked beautifully and served us 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, including school days, because in the 1950s, we all went home for lunch. When we entered middle school and could take a lunch to school, Mother would make 20 bag lunches every Sunday, 5 lunches a week for 4 children, and put them in the deep freeze. What a glorious childhood we had under Mother's easygoing and competent management, offset by my father's adventurous and fun-loving style. Throughout these 30 years of work in raising children, Mother kept her dream of nursing alive. She made sure that her nursing license was up to date and proudly displayed her graduation pin on her dresser, along with her ivory-handled brush and mirror set. Let's fast forward now to my parents' retirement from the family business, which they left in the capable hands of my brother David. Mother was by then 57, and Dad was 76. They moved from our family house in Glen Ellen to live permanently in our second home near Fairhope, Alabama. One Friday morning, soon after this move, Nora went to the local 70-bed hospital to speak to the nursing supervisor about a nursing position. Nora asked, "Do you ever need nurses?" And the woman quickly replied, "How about Monday?" And so 3 days later, Mother began her full-time nursing career on the afternoon shift from 3 to 11 p.m. This was a position she held joyfully for the next 18 years until she was 75. Ever the rebel, here's one last story. I think Mother was about 95 when my brother Tom stopped by to visit her, something he did routinely. He found a trail of bloody Kleenex on the garage floor, but no Mother and no car. Tom sat down in her living room to wait patiently for Mother's return. When she came back, she explained she had tripped over a low curb on her way back from collecting the mail and cut her forehead. After looking at her injury in the mirror, she decided she should see a doctor, so she drove herself to a clinic. The doctor stitched her up and told her to come back in 10 days so he could take out her stitches. But she replied to the doctor, "Oh, I'm too busy for that. I'll just take those stitches out myself." Competent and independent as always. To the very end of her life, she would say, "I have not passed a single day feeling bored or lonely or depressed." Who among us could ever say this? My mother, Nora, our quiet rebel, passed away quietly in January 2013, just 6 weeks before her 100th birthday. We 4 children were with her at her bedside. Thank you for allowing me to share these stories in memory of my wonderful mother, Nora.
Thank you, Anna. Now invite up Joe Peterson. And just a warning, this talk addresses suicide.
My brother Mike's death came with a hunting rifle. I knew his death was coming. There were signs of it, not least of which was the fact that he dropped out of society. He adopted alias names, he went on the lam, and he disappeared completely. I tried to find him. I talked to the police. I filed a missing persons report. I traveled the hinterlands of Wisconsin, Minnesota, and the Dakotas, looking for him or his body, which I knew if it came to that, would be found near one of his favorite fishing holes. I was determined to visit every favorite fishing holes of his in search of him or his body. I came close to finding him in an empty town called Epiphany, South Dakota. He had been seen the night before and he was reported to the police for erratic behavior outside of a place called the Coon Hunter Inn. In my quest to find him, I detoured with my father and my brother Bob to the Coon Hunter Inn looking for him. The Coon Hunter Inn is as lonesome a place as you can imagine. There is a church, a small graveyard. There is a Coon Hunter Inn, which is basically a trailer with a bar inside. And then there is the big prairie sky framed by a few cottonwoods. Tell me, I ask you, what is erratic behavior at a place called the Coon Hunter Inn? I wait for an epiphany on this question, but no epiphany from South Dakota has ever been forthcoming. Sitting on the rail fence by the small church cemetery with Bob and my father, we called Mike on the phone, but he never picked up. So we left voice messages. I told him I loved him, and I told him to come home. But he didn't heed our call, and he didn't come home. He just stayed disappeared, hiding out somewhere in that vast open space. Later, I learned he went on a walkabout. He drove through the Badlands. He visited Lake Tahoe for a week with a woman. He got pulled over for drunk driving in Deadwood. He was sequestered in a hospital for several weeks, alcohol sickness. When he got out of the hospital, he called his friend and told him, maybe I can get down to 18 beers a day. I was stuck in my car with the rain pounding. I couldn't see out the window. I had just pulled up in front of my home when I got the call from the sheriff. He told me that my brother's body was found inside his truck near a reservoir on an open expanse of land outside of Pierre, South Dakota. The place where they found him and his truck was a pretty place to fish, the sheriff told me. The kindness of strangers is repaid with what? What recompense can you offer? What act of gratitude can you give to those who came and discovered the body of your brother? To those who recovered his body and carried it away? What thanks can you give to the tow truck operator who did a thorough inventory of your brother's truck, even though you had pleaded with the tow truck operator not to, if only to spare him of the grisly act? But the tow truck operator wouldn't be spared the awful task. Instead, he wanted to bring grace where grace was hard to find. And he sent me a complete inventory of the truck with his condolences. What do you say to a hero like that? There is a simple truth about my brother that I might have told him. When you are gone, it is I and not you who will have to contend with this shroud that has fallen between us. And it is in that contention where I always find myself staring into the abyss of waning memory, searching for reflections that come up from the past of who he was and of who I was. And while stirring the memory waters, I exhort myself not to harden my heart or make fast my story of who those ever mutable selves were and of what those ever mutable memories are. Still, if you were asking me to tell you what was good about my brother, who died so violently by his own hand, I find myself almost going mute, unable to speak, choking on my own breath as if it were a chicken bone, and hard-pressed to work myself around the impasse of a person who verily in many aspects of his life, at least as far as I can see it, was a Cain who brought with him a nihilistic cloud of pain that was always venting its poison. Was he a Cain? Was this his story? Does this story capture him? Or are there myriad other stories, different facets of his character that can be brought to light? We received his ashes, and my brother Bob and I scattered them, according to his wishes, into the headwaters of the Bad River in northern Wisconsin. Because I am my brother's keeper, committed to expressing the truth of these matters, I've scattered his soul across the breadth of my writings, where I try to listen to the echo of memory, where two brothers who were first boys and then were men encounter each other in love and strife. We lost you in Epiphany, South Dakota, and scattered your ashes at the headwater of the Bad. Between then and then, you fell into the black pit and fell to the proverbial rocks at rock bottom. When you hit, you fell through, and you're still falling into the fitful light of memory. Oh, brother. Oh, brother. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. And our final speaker is Diane Brentari.
When we see the inscription, every time we look above the bima, we see the expression, Na'aseh v'nishma. The person I'm going to talk about put action or doing first, and then would speak as needed. When someone drops into your life as part of your extended family, you don't have any expectations most of the time. If you do, your mind might jump to the negative expectations based on stereotypes and cliches. The term mother-in-law, for many, comes with a certain amount of baggage. There are a lot of characteristics, and not all of them good ones, associated with Jewish mothers and mothers-in-law. But it is rare that you see all of the good characteristics in one person. But it is precisely my mother-in-law that I am going to be talking to you about, Lorraine Davidson, of blessed memory, whose imprint on my life has grown year by year, even more strongly after she passed in 2020 during COVID. She taught me about being a Jewish person, a Jewish woman, and I realized only gradually, year by year, how my new life as a Jew after my conversion in 2014 contrasted with what my life was like before being a Jew because of Lorraine. She embodied the Jewish tradition. Lorraine lived the life of a righteous Jewish woman, though I didn't even know what that meant at first. And in an interesting and individual way, she exemplified what the Jewish communities of Eastern Europe did in the shtetl, even though she was born in the USA. As Ivy Singer said in his Nobel Prize speech, the truth is that what the great religions preached the Yiddish-speaking people of the ghettos practiced day in and day out. They were the people of the book in the truest sense of the word. They knew of no greater joy than studying man and human relations, which they called Torah, Talmud, Musar, and Kabbalah. The ghetto was not only a place of refuge for a persecuted minority, but a great experiment in peace, in self-discipline, and in humanism. End of the quote. Lorraine Davidson was an individualized continuation of that experiment. She was open-hearted, lived in a positive frame of mind, and was generous and kind to everyone around her, and not just the people she liked best. I never heard her raise her voice or say a negative thing about anyone. If others around her might criticize something or someone, she would remain silent. If someone said something positive and she agreed, she would voice her support. She herself talked about everyone in a positive way, but not in a Pollyannish way at all. I learned a lot from her about how to talk about others and with others, especially as it concerns people who have a different opinion than mine. In effect, she was the touchstone for how I would craft my own life as a Jewish woman and wife. She didn't act as if she was the capital M matriarch of the family, but she was. A big part of my husband's, Arnold Davidson's, extended family lived and still lives around Washington, D.C. It is quite a large family. There are at least 30 or 40 people in the D.C. area alone. And I can give a couple examples of what I mean by matriarch. There was no doubt at all that Lorraine would have preferred that her eldest son marry a Jewish woman, but he married me. And I wasn't Jewish at the time. I was married 24 years before I made the leap to Judaism. Arnold and I were married in Italy in a civil ceremony without families present. When we got back to the US, we would eventually meet each other's families. And I was astonished that when we went to DC to meet the Davidson family, Lorraine and Arnold's father, Phil, threw us a party so that all of the family in the area could come, even though we married without any of them at the wedding, and they might have taken it as an insult that we did that. Lorraine introduced me and made a fuss over me to each and every one of the family. The rest of the family then followed her lead, and it was only much later that I realized that if she had tried to keep me hidden as the non-Jewish member of the family, or was cold to me, or even lukewarm, the rest of the family would have treated me the same. But she welcomed me and made me feel loved, and then so did the rest of the family. Her presence was like a blanket, but not one that smothered you. It just made you feel warm and comfortable. Another example of Lorraine's identity as matriarch is what happened towards the end of the lives of herself, of Lorraine and my father-in-law, Phil, of blessed memory. They were in ill health before the end of their lives and needed a caregiver, first Phil and then Lorraine. With Lorraine's permission, they employed a Muslim woman from Sierra Leone as a caregiver, Yuma Conte. And Yuma truly became a part of the family, again, thanks to Lorraine, almost in the same way that she welcomed me into the family. She just treated Yuma like a daughter, quietly, and without any fanfare or announcement. When Lorraine would be invited to a dinner or to a family get-together, Yuma was always invited too. And as with me, the extended family started to treat Yuma like a daughter. When my father-in-law passed, Lorraine asked Yuma to participate in the custom of throwing soil on the coffin at the gravesite with the rest of the family, and everyone thought that it was perfectly natural that she do so. I'd like to remind us of a famous quote by Abraham Joshua Heschel. When he was challenged about why he was involved in the civil rights movement and not praying, as a good rabbi should, Heschel said that he prayed with his feet, which is exactly what Lorraine did. She prayed with her whole being. And so far, I have tried to follow in her footsteps, and my version of praying with my feet are making Aliyah 5 years ago to support Israel, even though I don't talk about politics, and continuing to positively mentor students despite challenges that the universities are facing now. Just keep on keeping on. Many of us theorize or have the intention to live a spiritual mode of life, but few of us achieve it. Lorraine turned out to be an anchor point for me on so many levels. She is with me every day. There is a lot of theorizing about ethics, too. Philosophy is a way to think about the ethics of one's relationship to God, to others, and to oneself. Lorraine didn't teach, theorize, or talk about goodness or the spiritual life. My husband does all of these things, and maybe he was inspired by seeing Lorraine every day. She exemplified the spiritual life through the Jewish tradition. We academics theorize a lot about everything, but the kind of wisdom Lorraine showed us was in her bones, in her heart, in her spirit, not only in her mind. For myself, there was a time when I had the highest respect only for folks who both did good and then could describe and talk about the good that they just did. But as I get older, talking about and theorizing about good deeds seems to matter less and less to me. It is really about the deeds themselves. And one of the last deeds that Lorraine did was leave me her engagement ring, which was her prized possession. I wear it all the time, and every day I feel Lorraine with me.
Thank you, Diane. Thank you to Anna, Joe, and Diane. It's a really special privilege to be able to be brought into your memories in that way and really bring to life some of the abstract ideas of the prayer book. So thank you. And thank you to all of you for welcoming this form of memory.